Okay. So, nakikita naman po ba yung presentation ko ng malinaw? Baka po medyo mahina ang signal ko. Kita naman po ba?
Kita po, ma'am.
Sige po, thank you. So, for today's lesson, we're going to talk about basic theories as frameworks in ethics. So, um, last times, na-discuss ko na may mga na-discuss akong theory. Theory siya actually. Pero, hindi lang halata dahil yung iba doon is pakapyaw lang and meaning lang talaga yung binibigay ko. So, let's start by defining what is framework or frameworks. So, saan ninyo ba na naririnig or mas na-encounter madalas yung term na framework or frameworks? Hmm? Saan po na-encounter yung framework or frameworks?
Sa research po.
Okay, very good. Research. Kasi, mostly sa research, meron tayong dalawang frameworks, which is the conceptual framework and the theoretical framework. Pero hindi ako magdi-discuss ng ng, tawag dito, ng research this time. Kasi, hindi lang naman kasi sa research kailangan ng framework, kundi kailangan din sa ethics. So, let us define what is framework. So, framework defined as the basic structure underlying a system or a concept. It refers to a set of assumptions, concepts, values, and practices that constitutes a way of viewing reality. And it dictates one moral disposition or the way a person resolves its moral dilemma. So, meaning to say, um, framework is one of the foundation ng ating um, theory in ethics. Like for example, di ba sa isang bahay, meron tayong tinatawag ng mga hadike or merong mga poste para mabuo yun. And yung poste na yun, yun yung nagsusupport dun sa bahay. And yun yung nagsisilbing foundation. So, ganun din sa ethics. So, yung framework, it serves as a, wait lang ha. Ayan. It serves as a way of viewing reality. And it also helps us to have a foundation dun sa ating theory. So, para mas maintindihan nyo into detail what really framework is, ito po yung ito yung aking example. So, kung mapapansin nyo, sa isang puno, there is a root, trunk, leaves, branches. Yan. Yun yung mga parts ng ating tree. So, sa isang tree, ang part na, or yung trunk, yun yung nagsisilbing framework. Kasi, yun yung nagsisilbi o yun yung sumusuporta sa mga or sa iba't iba pang parts ng isang puno. Like for example, yung trunk, yung nagsisilbing suporta sa branches. So, ganun din sa framework, lalo na sa ethics. Yung framework is yun yung nagsisilbing trunk or foundation ng mga theories or different theories. So next, let us discuss the three subject areas or general subject areas in ethics. So meron po tayong tatlo. So dun sa tatlo na yan is we have meta-ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. So yan yung tatlo na ating i-discuss for this day. So yan. Itong three subject areas na to class, mostly ito yung ito yung ginagamit na foundation or framework ng mga ethicists. Yung mga ethicists, sila yung mga tao na nag-aaral ng ethics. Ayan. So, next. Meta-ethics. Let us define what meta-ethic is. The branch of ethics that studies the nature of morality, motivations based on the right or wrong, or based on the ideas pala, sorry. based on the ideas of right and wrong. So, yan. So, yan yung mga, um, yung meta-ethics, yun yung, um, nagbibigay ng meaning, or it talks about the meaning and reference and also the truths of moral judgment. And dito sa meta-ethics kasi, sabi nga nito, it studies the nature of morality. So, meaning to say, it also explains why is there goodness or wickedness, and um how or ano nga ba or how we know about them. Yun. So next one, let us discuss ano nga ba yung mga theories or sub-theories under meta-ethics. So, first one, we have cognitive and non-cognitivism. So, class, lagi nang tatandaan sa meta-ethics, lagi yung mga theories dito is contrasting. Meaning to say, from one another is hindi sila ganun ka magkasundo. Pwede yung isang theory is tumutulig sa or kabaliktaran siya ng another theory like this, cognitivism versus non-cognitivism. So, let us define first what cognitivism is. So, cognitivism states that moral judgments convey propositions that is and they are truth bearers or they are either true or false. Kasi, most of ethical theories na sa part ng cognitivist is yung right and wrong always matters. Meaning to say, kesyo mali pa yung dahilan na yun or mali yung reason, kesyo tama yung reason, it always matters. And there are two famous cognitive ethics that are the two forms of cognitive ethics are moral realism and ethical subjectivism. So we have two famous forms. So class, by the way, cognitive ethics and um, cognitive ethics and cognitivism ay iisa lang po. Okay, another term for cognitivism is cognitive ethics. So, yan. So, let us define first, under cognitivism is moral realism. So, moral realism, it explains that the existence of moral facts and the truth or falsity of moral judgment are independent of people's thoughts and perceptions. So, yung mga thoughts daw natin or yung mga moral facts is naka-base or uh, naka-independent dun sa thoughts and perceptions natin. And it maintains morality that is about objective facts. And the way of judgment in moral realism is object or objective siya. Na unlike naman for ethical subjectivism, the way they judge moral facts is it's subjective, kaya siya tinawag na subjectivism. And ethical subjectivism holds that the truth or falsity of ethical proposition are dependent on the attitudes or standards of a person or a group. And always remember that ethical subjectivism is also called is a contrary to moral realism. So, kung si moral realism or kung ang moral realism, the way it assess or ayun nga, the way it assess the moral judgment is objective. Pag si ethical subjectivism naman, subjective yung way ng kanyang pag-hold ng truth. So, after cognitivism, we have non-cognitivism, syempre. So, non-cognitivism denies that moral judgment are either true or false. So, kung sa cognitivism, mahalaga yung reason mo is either true yung reason mo or false yung reason mo, it always matters. Sa non-cognitivism, it denies kung totoo ba yun or hindi. And in non-cognitivism kasi class, yung mga judgments ng isang tao is it does not convey authentic proposition. What do we mean by authentic proposition? So, hindi sure kung yung isang moral judgment is tama nga ba talaga or mali siya. Kaya siya dinedeny ng non-cognitivism. Like for example, emotivism submits that moral judgment are mere expressions of our feelings and emotions. So, kung magbe-base tayo ng isang moral judgment based sa ating emotions and feelings, medyo hindi din siya gano'n ka-accurate. Kasi ang emotions ng tao and feelings ng isang tao is nagbabago and hindi siya stagnant. Unlike for the cognitivism, yung mga subtopics under cognitivism is you have to look or dig into the deeper situation before ka mag-come up into a moral judgment. Pero sa non-cognitivism is ginagamit, lalong-lalo na sa emotivism, is ginagamit yung emotions and feelings natin. Eh, di ba nga, yung feelings and emotions ng isang tao is unstable siya. So, kaya ang emotivism is under ng non-cognitivism. Okay? So, next one, we have under meta-ethics pa rin, is universalism versus relativism. So, moral universalism theorizes that moral facts and principles apply to everybody in all places. So, yun din. Like for example, yung best example for moral universalism is universal values. Di ba, do you remember what universal values is? Paki-chat nga, ano yung universal values? Ano po yung universal values? Example. Okay, do not harm others. Medyo, konti pa. Dalawa lang yun. Truth-telling and, ano pa yung isa? Or telling the truth and ano yung isa? Dalawa lang yun. Wala, nakalimutan na. Ayun, very good. Valuing and respecting of life. Syempre, yung dalawang yan, okay, thank you sa pagsagot. Yung valuing and respecting of life and yung telling the truth, it applies to every culture around the world. So, kahit pa man mapapunta ka ng Europe, mapunta ka ng ibang bansa, telling the truth and valuing and respecting of life will always be there. Yan. So, that's why it is an example of moral universalism. Kasi, those are the moral facts and principles that applies to everybody in all places, regardless of your culture or the value that you have in a certain culture. So always remember that moral universalism is also known as moral objectivism. So, moral relativism naman po, it submits that different moral facts and principles apply to different persons or group of individuals. So, meaning to say, like, ano na lang to, review na lang or recap na lang to, that yung mga paniniwala natin or traditions that we have in our culture could not be applied to other culture. Kasi nga, they have different moral facts and they have different concept of moral principles. So, yung mga values that we have in our culture, lalo na yung hospitality, yung pakikisama, yan, that applies on our culture. But, kung pumunta ka sa ibang bansa, like for example is Western country like Portugal, hindi mo sure kung pakikisama and hospitality would exist pa. Kasi it only applies to our culture. and not on their culture. So you have to respect that they have different facts and principles. So yun yung pinaka-message ng moral relativism. So after Universalism versus Relativism, we have under meta-ethics, ito na yung last, empiricism versus rationalism versus intuitionism. So moral empiricism is a meta-ethical stance which states that moral facts are known through observations and experience. So malalaman daw natin yung isang moral facts or um, moral knowledge through observing and throughout our experience. Siyempre, and yung moral judgment natin would always be based on our observation and experiences. Yan. So next one, after empiricism, we have rationalism. It contends that moral facts are knowable a priori, that is by reason alone and without the reference to experience. So kung ang empiricism, it said or it states that we could know our or we could discover moral facts through through observations and throughout our experience by experiencing it. Yung moral realism naman is, ang importante dito is reason. Yan. Having a reason about something is, yun yung pinaka-concept ng moral rationalism. Kasi mahalaga sa moral rationalism ang reason. And kaya nga siya sinabing rational or rationalism. Kasi, this theory relies on reason rather than yung our intuition or yung belief natin in taking up the action. So, medyo, it is always looking for a reason. So, next one, we have intuitionism. So, moral intuitionism submits that moral truths are knowable by intuition, and that is by immediate instinctive knowledge without the reference to any evidence. So, in intuitionism, it claims that all of us have intuitive awareness of value or morality, and that it defines the basis of our ethical knowledge. So, gumagamit daw tayo ng intuition for us to define our ethical knowledge. And yung pinaka-basis ng ating moral judgment will always be based on our intuition. And it does insist that moral values of actions may be known intuitively and even if their consequences have not been uncovered. So, yung moral values natin, like what I said earlier, yung moral facts, moral judgment is always solely based on our intuitions. Kaya nga siya tinawag na moral intuitionism from the root word intuition. So, yan. So, kung si empiricism ginagamitan ng ating experience and observation, si rationalism for us to know moral facts, it uses reason. Sa intuitionism naman, it uses our intuition. So next one, we have normative ethics. This is the second general subject area and the basis of frameworks of ethics. So it studies how man ought to act morally, examines ethical norm, that is the guidelines about what is right, worthwhile, virtuous, and just, and a prescribing form that is from is to should. So, yan. So this branch evaluates the standards of rightness and wrongness of action, and it determines the course of action. So, yan. So, like for example, is we can apply normative ethics if we know certain things. Like for example, discrimination is wrong, or we must always act in accordance with our duty. And for the easy distinction to meta-ethics, syempre sa meta-ethics, sabi ko ano what is goodness. Normative ethics naman, it deals with the issue what ought one to do. So, what are we going to do? Or what should we do? So, there are forms, again, of normative ethics. Or, there are three kinds pala, sorry, of normative ethics. Like, number one, we have deontology. So, on ontology, it is a rule obligation based theory. It bases morality on rules and duty, and it is also called as non-consequentialism. And it is the basis of deontology is the basis of Judaic and Christian law. Kasi class, um, deontology kasi it submits as obligatory and regardless of the consequences that actions might produce. Like, for example, common sa mga kalsada, di ba, na merong mga sign na bawal tumawid dito. Kasi there are parts of the road na sobra talagang um, dangerous para sa mga tao. And with that, di ba, yung bawal tumawid dito is a rule. And it is our obligation to follow that rule. So, if you are a pedestrian and doon ka tumawid sa part na may sign na bawal tumawid dito, is you're disobeying the rules. And so as you're also disobeying your duty. And when you disobey the rules and fail to do your duty, yun ay pwede kang matag or matatag ka as immoral. So, in other words, kapag hindi ka sumunod sa rules, that is an immoral action. So, ibig sabihin, the fact na hindi mo fulfill and hindi ka sumunod sa rule, that is an immoral act according to deontology. Kaya ako sinabi kanina na um, it is a principle that's submitted as obligatory kasi we have obligation. And kaya din siya tinawag na non-consequentialism kasi regardless of the possible actions or possible consequences na ginawa mo dun sa isang action, it doesn't matter. Because the moment pa lang na nag-disobey ka na sa rule and you fail to fulfill your duty, that would be an immoral act na agad. So next one, we have teleology. When it comes to teleology, it refers to the moral system that determines the moral value of action by their outcome. So it deems action as morally right if its favorable consequences are greater than its adverse outcome. It is also called consequentialism. So teleology, yan, it proposes that morality is determined solely by cost-benefit evaluation of the action's consequences. So, kung ano man yung pwedeng maging action ng iyong consequences, so, dun siya nagbe-base. And unlike deontology, the moment na you disobey rule, is matatag ka or you are tagged as immoral na. In teleology, kailangan muna nilang tingnan yung magiging action mo or magiging consequence ng iyong action before they know or before they determine if yung iyo bang nagawa is immoral or moral. Kaya siya tinawag na consequentialism kasi they look first into the consequences of the person's action. Okay? So next one, this would be the last. We have virtue ethics. In teleology, in making decisions, it should attain the following. Egoism, which means self-interest. eudaimonism, which is happiness, utilitarianism, which is general good or welfare of mankind, and hedonism, satisfaction of desire. So we have intellectualism, which is known as the knowledge derived from pure reason. So next one, we have virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is a character-based theory that implies the intention or benefit action. So choice could be either and both considered as good. So from the word itself or from the term itself, virtue ethics. It places emphasis kasi on developing our good habits. So yun yung pinaka-center ng virtue ethics. And in virtue ethics, sabi ko nga, it gives emphasis on developing our good habits, character. So yung pinaka-important dito is our moral education. Kasi, virtue ethics believes that um, having a good or having giving importance to the moral education molds us to become a habit ano ba yun? Molds us to have a habitual act and have a virtuous manner. Kasi it believes that focusing on our character um, describes right action that we choose and perform it by doing good. So, yun. Yun yung pinaka um, center ng virtue ethics. So next one, we have applied ethics. So in applied ethics, applying normative theories to real life situation and using ethical judgments, attempts to determine the ethically correct course of action in specific realms of human actions and classifies into various subfields. So in applied ethics, um, for a subject be considered as applied ethical issue, it must it must not only be matter of moral judgment, but yung isang applied ethical issue or yung isang ethical issues na yun, it should be controversial. Like this, for example. So, I think first subfield ng applied ethics, which is bioethics. In bioethics, it concerns the ethical issues pertaining to life and biomedical researches, medicines, healthcare, and medical profession. So, bakit kaya magiging um, controversial yung mga issues na mag-a-arise dito? It's because ang mga nakapaloob sa mga controversies ng bioethics is it concerns about the life of a person or life ng isang tao. Literal. Like for example, the surrogate modeling genetic manipulation of fetuses, stem cell and human embryos in research. Next one, we have in vitro fertilization, abortion, euthanasia, suicide, patient rights, confidentiality, and physicians' responsibilities. So, yung mga issues na yan. Next one, we have environmental ethics. So in environmental ethics, it deals with moral issues concerning with nature, ecosystem, and non-human content. So animal rights, experimentation, endangered species preservation, and pollution control and sustainable development. So these four bullets tackles about the issues on our environment. So, kung ang bioethics is ang pinaka-center niya is the controversies or moral issues regarding the life of a person. Sa environmental ethics naman, it deals with the moral issues concerning dun sa ating mismong environment. Kasama na dun yung ating animals. So next one, we have business ethics. I think you have a separate subject regarding this. But ito pa lang to. Examines moral principles in business environment. Like yung mga different moral issues na pwedeng mag-arise sa isang company. Like for example, corporate practices, policies, and behaviors, conducts and relationship of individuals and organization, social responsibility of business, employee rights, harassment, labor union and job discrimination, and etc. So, yan. So, next one, we have sexual ethics. This would be the second to the last sub topic for applied ethics. So, sexual ethics, it concerns moral issues about sexuality and sexual behavior. So, itong mga subtopics na to is dinidiscuss din siya sa gender and society. So, homosexuality, lesbianism, and polygamy. Next one, we have premarital sex, marital fidelity, and the use of contraceptive. Kasi itong mga moral issues na to is medyo hirap pa rin mag-open up yung mga tao when regards to this type of moral issues. And kaya siya nasama sa isang kasama siya sa subtopic ng applied ethics. Next one, last, social ethics. It deals with what is right for a society to do and how it should act as a whole. Like for example, racial discrimination. So paano ma-uplift ng isang society yung pagdi-discriminate, or paano ma-prevent ng isang society yung pagdi-discriminate sa isang race. Next one, we have death penalty and nuclear weapon production. So, syempre, nuclear weapons uses, radiation, and gunpowder drug use for fun and welfare rights. So, yan. Medyo harmful din kasi siya, not just for a person but also for the whole society. So, with that, any questions regarding my discussion? Questions po?
Wala po, ma'am.
Clarifications? None? Okay, wait lang.